Hello people and welcome to a very strange episode of our travel vlog. Today's vlog isn't going to be travel related at all, but this is something I think is really important to talk about. We're going to be talking about cervical screening. I just had my first ever smear test and I'm here to convince you to get yours. Get yours. Okay, so the reason I'm making this vlog today is because I was really nervous about getting my first smear test. And there was absolutely no need for me to be nervous at all. It was absolutely fine. And before I had my smear test, because I was so nervous, I did lots of research and found out as much about it as I could. And one of the things that really helped me calm down was watching another vlog, which I'm linking below. It's Lucy Wood. Well, she's called Lucy Wood. Her channel's called Lucy Wood, and I just want to say thank you to her for making the video because it made me feel better. Another video I watched, which I'm also linked below, was of this really retro smear test. I think it was actually in America, so I think they call it pap smear test. And it was from like the 80s and it was really retro, and that helped as well because I got to see the whole process, although it's a little bit different in here in the UK. Okay, so for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, basically here in the UK, when you're a woman and you turn about 25, you get a lovely letter from the good old NHS telling you that you're due for a smear test, and this is basically to check your cervix, the bit at the top of your vagina. And it's to check for precancerous cells. So they do a little kind of swab and then they send them off to the lab, and then you get a letter that tells you you're fine, or is it okay if you come back and check. That kind of whole concept sounds a bit weird because you have to show yourself, your privates, to a complete stranger and a nurse, obviously not a complete stranger. I mean, you don't know the nurse, but they're not like a random person. Okay, so you have to show it to the nurse. She has to kind of open you up. She has to swab. I'm not saying scrape, which is the word everyone seems to be using, and it's not a scrape, it's a swab. And then she puts it in a pot and sends it off. And it's as simple as that, really. And so I've kind of told you the process. I'm going to tell you my experiences, and I'm going to tell you why it's so important that you have yours done. Okay, so my experience of the whole thing, I actually went to the nurse a few weeks before because I had to have a Hep A jab, or a Hep B and a Hep A jab, and I mentioned to her that I needed my smear test and that I was a bit nervous about it. So she said, well, as you've met me before, you might want to book in with me again so you know it's not a complete stranger. That really helped. So I knew I had booked it right early in the morning because I prefer to get things done early in the morning, and I went in and she was there and she remembered me, which was nice, and she said, I know you're nervous, and she asked me a few questions about my periods, and then basically had to lay down on like the medical bed. I don't want to say bed, that's what it is, it's just the medical bed. They recommended that I wear a skirt, so I did. That was really good. I'm really glad I did that. Took my pants off, and then basically she gets this, it looks like a duck. The name of it is a speculum. There's a little picture here as well. So they put the speculum in, and it wasn't painful, but the only way I can really describe this, and I'm really sorry to my parents, this is kind of graphic. The only way I can describe it is it's kind of like when you have sex but you're not that ready to have sex, like, or you haven't warmed up yet. So it's kind of painful, but if you've had sex before, it's not something it won't be unusual to you. You'd be like, oh, okay, I felt that before, that's fine. And then she opened it. Again, it wasn't the most pleasant thing in the world, but it wasn't like, what the hell's going on? It was fine. Then they take a brush, and before, the nurse put the brush on my hand, a different brush, to show me how it felt. So before, the nurse had shown me this brush, a different brush, but you know, the same type of brush. And she put it on my hand, and it felt like this, like when you scratch with your nails, and I thought, that kind of hurts. I think that's going to hurt, but it didn't hurt at all when she did it on my cervix, which I also have a picture of, I think, on my cervix. She did it on there, and again, this is a kind of sensation I felt before, again during sex, when it's kind of, and it didn't feel like this at all. You could barely feel it, and it was fine, and it was really quick. She was just literally an out, and she pulled the thing out, and that was it. That's all it was. And I freaked out about it so much because it's not a very nice idea, and you know, but it was fine, and I would happily have one again in 3 years. Well, not happily, but when I next have one, it will be fine. Okay, so going back to me being really freaked out beforehand, I'm going to tell you a few more things that helped me deal with it, as it were. One thing I liked hearing about was that technically you shouldn't think about it as like your private area, even though you probably do. You should, I mean, she's a nurse, he or she is a medical professional, and you should think about it as like having an ear exam or a nose exam or an eye exam, or, you know, any kind of exam, an arm exam. And that's exactly what it was like an ear exam. That was the first thought that helped me, you know, it's not like anything else, it's a medical exam. The second thought that helped me was this is so important to have, and I'm going to read out some statistics. Cervical screening saves as many as 5,000 lives from cervical cancer a year in the UK. And for me, I love statistics, I love numbers, and I just think that's, you know, you could be someone who has, I'm sure you're fine, but if you're not, surely it's better to know and get it sorted. And that was another thing the nurse said. She said anything they find, they can help you with. So, and that really helped me, because I was thinking, what if they find something and they can't cure it? Maybe I would rather not know. But I think you would rather know, so that's good. And my final point that kind of, it was like I gave myself a sort of slap, like a mental slap, and I just said to myself, look, they're doing this for you. They're not doing this because they're evil or they hate you or something. They're doing this to help you. And there are many countries in the world where you actually have to pay for this test, like America, I assume. Imagine having to do it and having to pay for it. This is free, you know, free sample, get your free experience here, free travel experience. But not just that, you know, there are even worse places in the world where women have to go through terrible things. You know, there are women who, when they're on their periods, they have to live outside. They're not allowed to be in the house with the family, and there are other women who have their period and they have no idea what it is. And, you know, there are people who don't have access to pads and things like, or tampons, and they have to use leaves or grass. And there are other women even who have, you know, they get mutilated or they get female circumcision. And, you know, when you think about that and start crying, and then you think, okay, I'm really overreacting. And I mean, it's not, you know, I'm not saying a smear test is like loads of fun. I'm just saying if you compare it, I don't know, if that helps you. That kind of helped me kind of be like, what is wrong with you? Get over yourself. Okay, so I really hope this was helpful to you. This is just my own personal experience and some of the things that helped me. And, you know, I'm, like everybody says, absolutely fine. And I think something like 5 million women a year in the UK have this test or something like that. So if they can do it, you can do it. But yeah, like I said, I hope this has been helpful. I'm linking to some things below that helped me. I'm also going to be linking to some women's charities. You know, there's one that I really like which helps women in Africa get pads. So you might want to think about donating to them. I don't know, I did. What else? Please give me a like. This was such a horrible day for me. Not only was it my first smear test, which was actually fine, but I also had to go to the dentist. So it's like, you know, worst day ever. Give me a comment, tell me, have you had a smear test? And do you have any advice for anyone else? I think that would be nice. And yeah, subscribe to hear more about smear tests and travels.